Okay, our last two our last two problems are going to deal with more complex units. So far we've discussed units like kilograms, meters, and seconds in isolation. We haven't combined those units yet, but there are lots of times in physics where you have measurements that are combinations of units. For example, think about the units for speed. How are you guys used to seeing speed on, let's say, like speed limit signs? You guys are used to saying 65 miles per hour, okay? Miles per hour is a combination unit. Miles, unit of distance, hours, unit of time. It's units of distance over time, okay? So the units for speed that we typically use, and I know this is kind of, it's a little squished here, is meters per second. Or a couple other ways to write that, or one other way to write that is m/s, or meters over seconds. You might also see, like I said, miles per hour. In metric using countries, you see kilometers per hour. You sometimes see kilometers per second. All those are units of speed. Matter of fact, anything that has units that take a distance unit and divide by a time unit, those are units of speed, okay? So it's a more complex unit, but the general process is the same. So let's look at this first one. It says convert 20 kilometers per minute to meters per second. So our number that we're given is 20 kilometers per minute, and you'll notice that I don't use the kind of diagonal slash. I write it one over the top, or one unit over the top of the other, and that's just because it's easier that way to understand how you're supposed to cancel these out. We want to convert 20 kilometers per minute to meters per second. How many meters per second is 20 kilometers per minute? Well, it's really the same thing. I mean, it's just going to take a few different unit conversions, but we're going to do it one at a time. So we're only going to worry about one of these units at a time. It depends on what you want to convert first. Let's say you want to convert kilometers first. We need to convert kilometers to meters. That's easy enough. We have kilometers on top, so that means kilometers is going to go on the bottom in our unit conversion, our factor, and meters is going to go on top. That way kilometers cancels out. We know that there's 1 kilometer. For every 1 kilometer, there's 1,000 meters. Those are equivalent measurements. So now we're in meters per minute. We have to cancel out of minutes and get to seconds. Here's where it can get a little tricky if you're not paying attention. Look at where minutes is right now. The unit minutes, it's kilometers per minute. Minute is on the bottom. If I have something on the bottom that I want to cancel out, where should I line up minutes over here? It should go on top, because then we have minutes on top, minutes on the bottom, and they cancel out. We should have seconds on the bottom over here so that we end up with meters per second. We know that in 1 minute, there's 60 seconds. Now we just do the math, okay? So there's two individual conversions that we have to do. We worry about them one at a time. And the big thing to remember is the unit that you're canceling out of does not always go on the bottom. It is completely dependent on where the unit is in the original, okay? So 20 times 1,000 divided by 60 is 333.3 meters per second. Which makes sense. If you're going 20 kilometers per minute, that's really far. That's like going 14 miles in 1 minute. And if you're going 14 miles in 1 minute, you're probably traveling a very, very high number of meters per second, okay? Basically, this means that you travel 1 kilometer every 3 seconds. And a kilometer is just, it's a bit shorter than a mile, so that kind of makes sense that you would have such a high speed in meters per second if you're moving at 20 kilometers per minute. One last example, mixing together this kind of these complicated units and also some conversions from the imperial system to the metric system. The highway speed limit is typically 65 mph, miles per hour, in New York State. How fast is this in meters per second? So this is a good problem so you can get some idea of how fast a car is typically traveling on a highway. That's why we do this problem. We have 65 miles per hour. Now, we need to convert this to meters per second. We only worry about one of the conversions at a time. Let's convert hours into seconds first. If you don't know the conversion between hours and seconds, you can go hours to minutes, minutes to seconds. But let me show you this. If there's 60 seconds in a minute and there's 60 minutes in an hour, then the total number of seconds in an hour would be, well, 60 for every minute times the 60 minutes, 3,600. So you should be able to remember that now. 1 hour equals 3,600 seconds. I've lined it up like this so I can cancel out of hours, and now I would have the speed in miles per second. And that's good. I want this in meters per second though, so I need to figure out how to get miles to meters. So now I'm worried about the distance conversion. The one distance conversion that I remember, the one that I choose to remember, is that for every 1 mile, and you can look this up, it's right on the front, I believe, there are 5,280 feet. And we also know, that gets us out of miles, that in 1 foot is 12 inches. Now here's the important part. We need to get from the American imperial system to the metric system. And that's where this conversion comes in. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Again, you're not going to have to memorize that. If it's needed on a test or homework, I will provide it to you. And if it's needed on a homework, it's right here in your notes. You should have your notes out while you're doing your homework. But it is something that's good to remember. So we're out of feet. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. And now we just need to convert to meters. And I know that there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Looking at the math, I'm going to have to do 65 divided by 3,600 times 5,280 times 12 times 2.54 divided by 100. 65 divided by 3,600 times 5,280 times 12 times 2.54 divided by 100. So we see that 65 miles per hour is equivalent to 29.06 meters per second. So a typical car on a highway in New York State that's traveling at the 65 mile an hour speed limit is actually traveling a little tiny bit over 29 meters per second. All right. Okay, so everything that I've been showing you is just called unit conversion. It's taking a measurement and writing it in a slightly different measurement, taking one distance measurement and changing it into another distance unit and seeing how big that measurement would be in those units. Unit conversion is a process. You need to understand the process. It's not necessarily about getting the answer right now. It's about you guys following the process of unit conversion. Do you know to write down the original number? Do you know to make a parentheses with a fraction in it? Do you know how to line up the units? Do you know how to put the numbers on the right sides of the fraction? If you can do all that, the math itself is easy. Okay? So we're going to keep practicing unit conversion pretty much all year, and it's something that you do need to know. There's almost always at least one question on the Regents that involves unit conversion. So there's our talk about the metric system and unit conversion. If you need to, you can rewatch some of this. And next, we will be looking at measurement, error, and uncertainty. I'll see you later.